Today I'll be going over the basics of the Arduino programming language. Arduino is a C and C++ based coding language, so much of the code will be similar to these languages. I'll go over some basics that are more unique to Arduino. When you make a new sketch, you will see this screen. A couple of things show up automatically created for you. The first is a pre-commented out section where you can input any information about your code that you want. Below that is the first bit of code, void setup. Void setup is where you initialize any sensors attached to your Arduino or perform commands that you only want to run upon initially giving your Arduino power. For example, connecting to Wi-Fi or initializing a screen. Beneath void setup is void loop. Void loop is essential to the Arduino language, as it is where the majority of your code will be. Void loop will execute every command inside of it, then immediately run again for as long as your Arduino is plugged into a power source. You can also write functions just like any other language and call them within the loop in order to organize your code. The first basic command you should know is Serial.begin. Serial.begin accepts a long type input. The most common value you will see is 9600. This command opens the serial port and sets the baud rate, which allows you to use the Serial.print and Serial.println commands, which are Arduino's print commands. The next command you should know is pinMode. pinMode takes two parameters. The first is the pin which you have plugged something into, and the second is whether it is an input or an output. The pin is typically going to be a digital pin, but you can also tell it to make the analog pins act as digital pins by referring to them as A0, A1, and so on. The next series of commands you're going to want to know are Serial.print, Serial.println, analog read, analog write, digital read, and digital write. Serial.print prints any value put into it, and Serial.println prints any value put into it and then returns to the next line. Analog read and digital read are both commands that accept one input, which is the pin you want to read from. Analog read will return an integer value that's range will vary depending on the sensor. Digital read will return high or low, or if you set it equal to an integer, 0 for low and 1 for high. Analog write and digital write both accept two inputs. The first input is the pin which you want to write to, and the second is the value you want to write to the sensor. For analog write, what you write to the sensor will vary depending on what the sensor accepts. It will often be a range of numbers. For digital write, you'll be writing high or low to the sensor. The last command you should know before you begin is delay. Delay accepts an integer input. This integer represents the number of milliseconds you wish to delay your code. This is important as you often do not want your code to run at the same time. This concludes our overview of the basics of the Arduino programming language.